Hi, I'm Sue. Thanks for joining me for today's Bible reading for October 7th. I'm reading Matthew 13 through 14, and it is just a reading, not a study. The other day I opened up and said, thanks for joining me for the Bible study. It's not a study. I say this periodically because it's just not meant to be that. And so I'll just reiterate kind of the purpose of the broadcast is to get through our Bible, to read. I want to encourage people to get through their whole entire Bible every year so that you have the big picture scope of this Bible. And so I'm trying to make the broadcast about that, but also a little bit conversational and add a little interest in just reading a straight read through Bible. I want it to be conversational. I want people to join in the comments if they want to, or email me. So just wanted to reiterate that again. It's not necessarily a study. I don't consider myself a Bible scholar, but I love the Bible and I've read it many times over the 40 years of being a Christian. And so I just want to share that and pass that passion on to people. Now, we started in the New Testament just about a week ago. And so far, we've had the genealogy of Jesus Christ and his birth and early childhood. And then we went straight to John the Baptist and the baptism of Jesus and Jesus' early ministry, his temptation, his early ministry, and then his travels around Galilee. And, he was healing the sick, casting out devils, teaching, preaching. We covered things like how to give, how to fast, how to pray, the cure for anxiety, what it means to not judge. This millennial generation needs to study that out because it's really the true principle of how that operates. This millennial generation that's always saying, "Don't judge me." Okay, it's a double-edged sword. We're supposed to have good judgment and judge situations and principles and truth, but we're not necessarily supposed to place a judgment against each other. That's God's job, right? So anyway, in Matthew here, we have Jesus teaching these things and driving out demons and healing people and just basically spreading the love of the kingdom everywhere he went, announcing the kingdom and calling his disciples. And then he commissioned them to go out and do the work. So he's training them. He's reproducing himself. And, excuse me today. And just more and more teaching here. Excuse me, with many references to the Old Testament. This is where he talked about, you'll know a tree by its fruit. He gave the sign of Jonah that, as Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days and 3 nights, he would be in the belly of the earth. And then a bunch of parables. And today with chapter 13, it's just almost completely parables. Quite a few of them, and that's interesting. And then for chapter 14 today, we have John the Baptist beheaded, the feeding of the 5,000, the walking on the water, and miraculous healings. So that gives a little bit of a framework to put this information as we read through. Matthew chapter 13, verse 1, the parable of the sower. On that day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the seaside. Great multitudes gathered to him, so that he entered into a boat and sat, and all the multitude stood on the beach. He spoke to them many things in parables, saying, Behold, a farmer went out to sow. As he sowed, some seeds fell by the roadside, and the birds came and devoured them. Others fell on rocky ground, where they didn't have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, because they had no depth of earth. When the sun had risen, they were scorched, because they had no root, they withered away. Others fell among thorns. The thorns grew up and choked them. Others fell on good soil and yielded fruit, some 100 times as much, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Why did Jesus use parables? The disciples came and said to him, Why do you speak to them in parables? He answered them, To you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but it is not given to them. For whoever has, to him will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever doesn't have, from him will be taken away even that which he has. Therefore speak to them in parables, because seeing they don't, therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they don't see, and hearing they don't hear, neither do they understand. In them the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, I'm sorry for the distraction. My little dog's prancing underneath me. You might hear him. Okay, no, sir. Go. Let me read that last verse, 14. In them, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, By hearing you will hear, and will in no way understand. Seeing you will see, and in no way perceive. For this people's heart has grown callous, their ears are dull of hearing, and they have closed their eyes. So that should cause us all to check our heart, shouldn't it? Their heart, because he's telling why they can't hear, why they're not perceiving these revelations that are coming from Jesus, why they don't get the parables. It says their heart has grown callous and their ears are dull of hearing, and they have closed their eyes. Or else perhaps they might perceive with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their heart, and would turn again, and I would heal them. Isaiah 6. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For most certainly I tell you that many prophets and righteous men desired to see these things which you see, and didn't see them, and to hear the things which you hear, and didn't hear them. The parable of the sower explained. Hear then the parable of the farmer. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and doesn't understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away that which has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown by the roadside. What was sown on the rocky places, this is he who hears. This is the awkward wording again. Verse 20. What was sown on the rocky places, this is he who hears the word and immediately with joy receives it. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. When oppression or persecution arises because of the word, immediately he stumbles. What was sown among thorns, this is he who hears the word, but the cares of this age and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. What was sown on good ground, this is he who hears the word and understands it, who most certainly bears fruit and produces, some 100 times as much, some 60, and some 30. The parable of the wheat and the weeds. He set another parable before them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while people slept, his enemy came and sowed darnel weeds also among the wheat and went away. Let's see what that darnel weed is. First I've heard that. Darnel, it's the footnote says darnel is a weed grass, probably bearded darnel or Lolium temulentum, that looks very much like wheat until it's mature, when the difference becomes apparent. So darnel weeds, those are the tares, right? So it says, now I gotta find where I left off. But while people slept, the enemy came and sowed darnel weeds also among the wheat and went away. But when the blades sprung up and produced grain, then the darnel weeds appeared also. The servants of the householder came and said to him, Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where did these darnel weeds come from? He said to them, An enemy has done this. The servant asked him, Do you want us to go and gather them up? But he said, No, lest perhaps while you gather up the darnel weeds, you root up the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the harvest time I will tell the reapers, First gather the darnel weeds and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. The parables of the mustard seed and the yeast. He set another parable before them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is smaller than all seeds. But when it is grown, it is greater than the herbs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in its branches. He spoke another parable to them. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal until it was all leavened. I'm going to read that one again. Very short, just 2 sentences. He spoke another parable to them. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures. Let me look what measures means on that footnote. Literally 3 sata. 3 sata is about 39 liters, or a bit more than a bushel. So 39 liters. That's a good amount. Gosh. So it says, the kingdom of heaven is like yeast, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal, or 39 liters of meal, until it was all leavened. Using parables fulfills prophecy. Jesus spoke all these things in parables to the multitudes, and without a parable he didn't speak to them, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken through the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things hidden from the foundation of the world. Psalm 78. And isn't that true? So I will utter things hidden. So there was a lot about Jesus that was hidden. I mean, he's written about all through the Old Testament. I'm just trying to elaborate a thought that came in my head, everybody. He was written about all through the Old Testament, but it was a mystery. Nobody really understood. They had all kinds of ideas of what was going to happen, how the Messiah was going to come and what he was going to do, but they really didn't know. And I have learned that most prophecy is understood in hindsight. It becomes clear in hindsight, and that was true with Jesus. And even now, we're looking to the future prophecies and all trying to figure out how it's going to play out. And we really won't understand until it happens, right? And then you have here the disciples and later the Apostle Paul finally putting the puzzle together once Jesus was revealed, and finally getting out those old prophecies and seeing how he fulfilled them to a T, to an absolute T. But they could never have figured that out ahead of time. And so that's what I think it means when it says, I will utter things hidden from the foundation of the world. Those things were hidden so that the enemy couldn't come and stop the plan of God through Jesus Christ, could not stop the redemption plan of God. I'm going to say God had the card up his sleeve. He had it figured out. He trumped the enemy, right? So, it was from Psalm 78. It said, let me go back and examine this. It said, Jesus spoke these things in parables to the multitudes, and without a parable he didn't speak, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken through the prophets, saying, I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things from the foundation, hidden from the foundation of the world. Hidden from the foundation of the world. Psalm 78. So I also notice it's calling that psalmist a prophet. Isn't that interesting? I don't know who wrote Psalm 78, which psalmist. There's more than one. Next heading. Jesus interprets the wheat and the weeds. Then Jesus sent the multitudes away and went into the house. His disciples came to him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the darnel weeds of the field. He answered them, He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds are the children of the kingdom, and the darnel weeds are the children of the evil one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. As therefore the darnel weeds are gathered up and burned with fire, so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that cause stumbling in those who do iniquity, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. The parables of the hidden treasure and the priceless pearl. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in the field, which a man found and hid. In his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who is a merchant seeking fine pearls, who having found one pearl of great price, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. The parable of the net. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet that was cast into the sea and gathered some fish of every kind, which when it was filled, fishermen drew up on the beach. They sat down and gathered the good into containers, but the bad they threw away. So it will be at the end of the world. The angels will come and separate the wicked from among the righteous, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. There'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. New heading, Storehouse of Truth. Jesus said to them, Have you understood all these things? They answered him, Yes, Lord. He said, Therefore, every scribe who has been made a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like a man who is a householder who brings out of his treasure new and old things. When Jesus had finished these parables, he departed from there. Rejection at Nazareth. Coming into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished and said, Where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Isn't this the carpenter's son? Okay, so a couple thoughts. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. One thought was, I keep wanting to stop and meditate on these parables. It's been a while since I read them. And it actually has a different effect reading out loud. I feel like I'm concentrating more. Kind of like the difference between driving a car and being a passenger, right? I like both. I love being read to. But there's difference reading it out loud. And the other thought was, well, to finish that thought, so I find myself wanting to stop and really think about these comparisons being made in the parables. So I'll do that when I re-listen to the video. And then here, he was teaching in the synagogues, and they were, they saw his wisdom and his authority and the works he was doing, and they were shocked. But people were teaching in those synagogues all the time. They still do to this day. The synagogues were like outposts from the temple. And, so Jesus was notably different from everybody else. And it says they were astonished. He was that different. What a privilege to have sat in his presence while he was on earth in this phase of his ministry. So it says, where did this man get this wisdom and mighty works? Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother called Mary, and his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all of these things? They were offended by him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country and in his own house. He didn't do mighty works there because of their unbelief. John the Baptist beheaded. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the report concerning Jesus and said to his servants, this is John the Baptizer. He is risen from the dead. Excuse me. That is why these powers work in him. For Herod had arrested John and bound him and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. For John said to him, it is not lawful for you to have her. When he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced among them and pleased Herod. Therefore he promised with an oath to give her whatever she should ask. She, being prompted by her mother, said, give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptizer. The king was grieved, but for the sake of the oaths and those that sat at the table with him, he commanded it be given. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison. His head was brought on a platter and given to the young lady, and she brought it to her mother. His disciples came, took the body, and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. Feeding 5,000. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place apart. When the multitudes heard it, they followed him on foot from the cities. Jesus went out, and he saw a great multitude. He had compassion on them and healed their sick. When evening had come, his disciples came to him, saying, this place is deserted, and the hour is already late. Send the multitudes away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves food. But Jesus said to them, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. They told him, we only have here 5 loaves and 2 fish. He said, bring them here to me. He commanded the multitudes to sit down on the grass. He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed, broke, and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave to the multitudes. They all ate and were filled. They took up 12 baskets full of that which remained left over from the broken pieces. Those who ate were about 5,000 men, in addition to women and children. Walking on the water. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. After he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into the mountain by himself to pray. When evening had come, he was there alone, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, distressed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. In the 4th watch of the night, Jesus came to them walking on the sea. It says, see Job 9:8. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it's a ghost, and they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, cheer up, it's me, don't be afraid. Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the waters. He said, come. Peter stepped down from the boat and walked on the waters to come to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was strong, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. Peter stepped down from the boat and walked on the water. Wait, I skipped something. Verse 31, immediately Jesus stretched out his hand, took hold of him, and said to him, you have little faith, why did you doubt? When they got up into the boat, the wind ceased. Those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, you are truly the Son of God. Miraculous healings. When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. When the people of that place recognized him, they sent into all that surrounding region and brought to him all who were sick. And they begged him that they might just touch the fringe of his garment. As many as touched it were. And let me back up. I'm going to start that last section. It's 3 verses at the very end here. Miraculous healings. When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. When the people of that place recognized him, they sent into all that surrounding region and brought to him all who were sick, and they begged him that they might just touch the fringe of his garment. As many as touched it were made whole. That's it for today's reading. Be sure to check the subscribe with the bell so you can be notified when the next day's reading comes out, and check the description and the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Shalom.